Bear Wolf, Joshua Richards, Dylan Penders, Fred Kettle, and April Windsor, Amelia Flanagan, decided to open up about the horrors they've experienced over the past year in Emmerdale. But Bear was the only one with a lot to lose. As a result of Dylan and April telling DS Walsh about everything Ray Walters, Joe Absalom, and Celia Daniels, Jay Griffiths, put them through. They were told this week that they're no longer suspects in the investigation. It was DS Walsh's way of telling them that the light at the end of a very long tunnel was finally in sight. While Paddy Kirk, Dominic Brunt, was relieved to hear the news, he knew his loved ones weren't completely out of the woods. Ever since his dad Bear returned, he's worked hard with Dylan to keep his murder of Ray a secret from the police. Paddy maintained the view for a little while that Bear didn't need professional help. In his eyes, he could give his dad the support he needed, and there wouldn't be any risk of Bear confessing to murder and getting the police involved. Fortunately, Paddy changed his mind this week when he saw Bear breaking down in front of April. He knew that his dad really did need counseling, and they'd just have to take the risk surrounding keeping Ray's death a secret. Today's episode of the ITV soap focused solely on Bear, April, and Dylan. April and Dylan opened up to Rona Goskirk, Zoe Henry, and Paddy, while Bear spoke to a counsellor called Lucy. At the start, Bear was plagued with visions of Ray, which impacted how he processed what Lucy was saying. Whenever she spoke the truth about Bear's situation, Ray would appear and counteract it. It was telling Lucy about Anya that saw Bear make a breakthrough. Anya was Bear's friend on the farm and fellow slave, and died as a result of Celia and Ray failing to get her medication for her ill health. Bear was forced to bury her on Moira Dingle's, Natalie J. Robb, farmland. Talking to Lucy about Anya and how Ray didn't look after her properly made Bear realize that the man he called a friend most certainly wasn't. Bear did extremely well to keep the secret throughout the session, but he fell apart when Lucy called him a good man. He told Lucy that good men don't murder people, and then confessed to killing Ray.as Dylan, Paddy, Rona and April headed out for an evening walk. They witnessed DS Walsh leaving the Anderson household with Bear in handcuffs. She explained that Bear had told the truth about Ray, and Lucy revealed he was the one who called the police. Bear is charged with manslaughter, and the solicitor does his best to reassure Paddy that they will argue it was self-defense, but it's feeling like a weak defense. At this point, they try and encourage Bear to think strategically about his plea, but it's all too much, and he decides to throw the towel in and plead guilty. Will Paddy be taken down with him? Ear sat hunched forward in the armchair, his massive hands clasped together as if in prayer. His breathing was steady, but his eyes were restless. They flickered toward the window every few seconds, like he expected someone to be standing there, watching, waiting. Across the village, Dylan Penders and April Windsor were experiencing something unfamiliar. Relief. DS Walsh had told them they were no longer suspects in Ray Walters' death. After months of fear, manipulation, exploitation, and terror at the hands of Ray and Celia Daniels, the police finally believed them. They were victims, not killers. For April, the words felt unreal. "You're safe," DS Walsh had said. Safe. April didn't remember what that felt like. Chapter 2. Secrets between father and son. At the heart of it all stood Paddy Kirk. Relieved. Terrified. Proud. Guilty. He'd spent months protecting his father, covering up evidence, steering conversations away from dangerous territory, watching Bear unravel piece by piece, but telling himself he could handle it. He didn't want counseling involved, didn't want outside professionals digging, because professionals ask questions, and Bear had answers that would destroy everything. "You don't need therapy," Paddy had insisted at first. "You've got me." But Paddy wasn't trained for this, and deep down he knew it. Chapter 3. The Breakdown. It happened suddenly. April was sitting at the kitchen table when Bear's breathing changed. She noticed before anyone else. His jaw tightened, his gaze fixed somewhere past her shoulder. "Bear?" she asked softly. He didn't respond. Then he whispered, "He's here." April's blood ran cold. Paddy rushed in. Rona followed. Bear wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Ray. Only Ray wasn't there. Or was he? Chapter 4. Facing the Past. The next morning, Bear sat opposite Lucy, the counsellor. The room was warm, neutral, calm. But Bear's mind wasn't. Every time Lucy spoke about trauma, Ray appeared, smirking, contradicting. "You're not a victim," Ray's voice echoed in Bear's mind. "You were weak." Lucy's voice cut through. "You were controlled, manipulated, abused." Ray laughed in Bear's vision. "You needed me." Bear clenched his fists. Then Lucy mentioned Anya. And everything changed. Chapter 5, Anya. Anya had been kind. Gentle. Too gentle for the cruelty of Ray and Celia's farm. She'd been ill. Needed medication. Ray promised to sort it. He didn't. Bear had watched her grow weaker. Watched her plead. Watched Ray ignore her. When she died, Bear had dug the grave himself. On Moira Dingle's farmland. He buried his friend like she was nothing. That was the moment something inside Bear shifted. Ray hadn't been a friend. He had been a monster. Chapter 6, The Confession. Lucy leaned forward gently. You did what you had to do to survive. Ray's voice roared in Bear's mind. You're a killer. Bear's breathing faltered. Lucy said softly, You are a good man. That broke him. Good men don't murder people. The words slipped out before he could stop them. I killed him. Silence filled the room. Lucy's expression didn't change. But she stood. And she left the room. Bear knew why. Chapter 7, The Arrest. As April, Dylan, Rona, and Paddy stepped outside for fresh air, they saw the flashing lights. D.S. Walsh stood at the Anderson house. Bear was in handcuffs. Paddy froze. Dad. Bear didn't fight. Didn't argue. D.S. Walsh explained calmly. He confessed. Lucy had called the police. Paddy felt the ground shift beneath him. Chapter 8, Manslaughter. The charge came quickly. Manslaughter. The solicitor tried to reassure them. We argue self-defense. But Bear wasn't listening. He was tired. So tired. The secret had eaten him alive. He didn't want strategy. Didn't want loopholes. Didn't want legal games. I'm pleading guilty, he said. Paddy stared at him in disbelief. You can't. But Bear could. And he would. Chapter 9, Paddy's Fear. That night, Paddy couldn't sleep. He replayed everything. Helping hide evidence. Keeping quiet. Knowing the truth. Accessory after the fact. Obstruction. Perverting the course of justice. Would they come for him next? Had he destroyed his own life trying to save his father? Rona sat beside him. We'll face it, she whispered. But fear had already settled deep inside him. Chapter 10, April and Dylan. April blamed herself. If she hadn't been targeted, if she hadn't needed saving. Dylan struggled too. Ray didn't deserve to die. But he had deserved to be stopped. There was a difference. Wasn't there? They visited Bear before his court appearance. He smiled at them. For the first time in months. Not haunted. Not hunted. Just calm. Chapter 11, The Courtroom. The village gathered. Whispers filled the air. Bear stood tall. When asked for his plea, he didn't hesitate. Guilty. Paddy's chest tightened. The solicitor looked defeated. But Bear looked free. Because the truth was finally out. Chapter 12, Consequences. Outside court, D.S. Walsh pulled Paddy aside. We'll need to ask you some questions. There it was. The reckoning. Paddy nodded. He wouldn't lie. Not anymore. Chapter 13, Why he did it. The full story emerged. Ray had cornered Bear that night. Mocked Anya. Threatened April. Said he'd never stop. Something snapped. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't rage. It was protection. A struggle. A shove. A fall. A fatal blow. Self-defense? Maybe. But Bear didn't want to argue technicalities. A man was dead. And he was responsible. Chapter 14, The Village Divides. Some said Bear was a hero. Others said killing is killing. April stood firm. He saved me. Dylan nodded. But Paddy? Paddy just wanted his dad home. Chapter 15, The Sentence Awaiting. As Bear awaited sentencing, something unexpected happened. He slept. No visions. No Ray. No guilt screaming in his ears. He had told the truth. Whatever came next, he would face it honestly. Paddy visited one last time before the hearing. Are you scared? He asked. Bear smiled gently. No. For the first time in a long while. I'm not. Final question. Will Paddy be taken down? Legally? It's possible. Morally? He did what sons do. He protected his father. But in Emmerdale, secrets always surface. And consequences always follow. The real question isn't whether Paddy will be taken down. It's whether this family can survive another storm.